And with us now to talk about what's new in the Ag in the Classrooms in Minnesota, we have Sue Knott, and Sue is with the Minnesota Ag in the Classroom program. And we have from the FFA Foundation, its Executive Director, Val Arsvold. Sue, Val, thanks for joining us on Compass.
Thank you.
It's one of my favorite topics. I love Ag in the Classroom because as so many people in our viewing area are, grew up on a farm, spent a lot of time with agriculture. But Sue, in your case, Ag in the Classroom, it's a statewide program, and even though the story showed how it worked in a broader setting, I mean, it's really about empowering teachers most of the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We really try to provide resources and tools to teachers throughout the state that teach a wide variety of topics. So you could be a first grade teacher, or fifth grade, middle school science, high school math, whatever. We try to provide lesson plans, print materials, videos, just resources so agriculture can be one of the tools to help students achieve the required concepts and standards in those areas.
So it's really about not agriculture as a separate topic as much for teachers to say, here's how you can use agriculture to teach science, or math, or other topics, right? That's a big part of it?
That's exactly right. Integrating, the plants, animals, food, farmers, everything involved in agriculture within those academic classes, so a student doesn't necessarily need to just be in an ag class to learn about agriculture.
And the age ranges typically for Ag in the Classroom in the schools?
We're proud to offer things at every level. So K through 12, there's, like I mentioned, some lesson plans, resources, things that would be appropriate for that age level. And we also really try to educate the teachers as well. So we offer professional development opportunities where myself and our other Ag in the Classroom education specialists will come to a hands-on workshop to show teachers how to utilize these tools. We're also really excited this summer. We're offering 3 teacher tours. So for 2 days, we travel around to different, farms, processing site, research institutes, so those teachers can learn a little bit about agriculture and then also see how that fits in their curriculum.
Sure. So we move from all ages to, in your case, Val, with FFA, it's a different group, but it's a very different kind of experience as well.
It is. So we really focus our programs on 7th grade through age 21. And so our curriculum is taught in the high school and junior high level, and we really try to give those students skills that will be useful to themselves, but also for them to share what they know with the greater audience. And they do that through a number of ways. Sometimes we utilize the Ag in the Classroom materials. Otherwise, it's creativity that's happening within each school. So we really know that we serve a purpose in about 185 communities across the state of Minnesota. That's to build up that individual as well as share what they know with others.
Yeah, and sharing what they know with others, that might include things like sharing some of the information with the younger students, putting on an FFA demonstration, and having the younger kids involved, right? I think I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got students that go into the elementary and they mentor those students, and they utilize those materials and other resources to make it hands-on learning for those younger kids, inspire them to be involved in the production of their food and to get a better understanding. So we know that our students, nearly 11,000 of them have chosen to be in the FFA, are really involved in helping share that message.
Sure, and while I know that Ag in the Classroom in Minnesota has been around for about 30 years, mid-'80s. The FFA goes back much longer than that.
1929 here in Minnesota. So we were one of the early states to bring in the Future Farmers of America. We now go by the FFA to just recognize the diversity of students coming in, as well as the diversity of opportunities that they have when they complete their FFA involvement.
And I loved something that you said before we started recording, and I'd like to go back to it, about the percentage of success that you see among FFA students.
So we're really excited. We know that when students get involved in agricultural education, that they graduate at about 10% higher than the state average. And they do that because it's hands-on learning. I think all of us can identify how much more we remember when we're actually physically doing it versus just verbally or hearing it. So we know that the agriculture in the classroom, the instruction, the FFA component, and their supervised ag experience program all come together to develop a well-rounded student that's going to be successful, and we first see that at a much higher graduation rate.
And then also that may be a graduation rate that people might think of as being heavily involved in rural areas, which is true, but I know there are also urban and suburban programs really across the country, not just in Minnesota.
Exactly. So our membership is about 1/3 rural kids that grow up on a farm. That would be reflective of how I grew up. Another third is like my children. We live in a smaller community, but they're not on a farm. And then the last third are kids that are from bigger communities. We have programs in the Twin Cities, Rochester, Duluth, some of those larger towns as well. And the goal is FFA and ag education fits everybody. It's just finding that niche that intrigues them.
And I'm sure, Sue, in your case, you're seeing that where you're not just talking about urban, suburban, rural kids, but wherever kids are, as Val said, they may not grow up on a farm, So the exposure and what they have to learn over the years in ag in the classroom has had to change to evolve with that.
Right, and no matter where those kids are, in what community or urban, suburban, rural, there's always opportunity for growth in their knowledge of agriculture. So we, think that if you're in a rural community where maybe you see those cornfields, but you're not really sure what's going on, agriculture can be a link to help you get that. And maybe if you are one of the students that work on that farm, you can be like, all right, I'm doing science every day. I just didn't realize it. So, like Val said, FFA has a place for all students. We think Ag in the Classroom has a place to be used in all communities and with all students as well.
And it seems as if so many discussions about education will often focus on, how is it paid for, where is it placed, where it in the schools. And one of the interesting things about Ag in the Classroom is I know that it started with an idea of a public-private partnership.
And it continues that way. So we're lucky here in Minnesota. We have really strong support of the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. So myself and one other staff person is funded and housed and there, which is fantastic because we get to have experts on all sorts of agriculture topics at our fingertips. But then we also have a Minnesota Agriculture in the Classroom Foundation that gets supporters and financial contributions so that we can develop the resources that teachers use and offer them at no cost. And I like to tell people, I was a classroom agriculture teacher for 10 years, and I think my two biggest challenges were having enough time and having enough money. So we try to overcome those by having free resources that we think are really well developed and can really, just be used right away. So hopefully helping teachers overcome those challenges pretty easily.
And as compared to that, Val, I suppose for FFA, the normal path for students to become engaged is through a high school that has a vocational ag teacher or multiple teachers assigned to this subject area.
That is correct. So to access the FFA, you do need to have an agricultural education program in place. And so that also identifies one of the challenges we have, and that is we have a shortage of agriculture teachers. So we continue to try to recruit and retain the very best. And we know that they're the very best because business and industry wants them too. But when they do choose to come into the classroom, they are impacting hundreds of students every year. And we know that's really important. And so we also work to make sure that it's affordable to people to be involved in ag education in the FFA. We know that of the FFA, 40% of them come from economically challenged homes. And so we work hard, and again with my role with the foundation, to provide those resources so they can participate and experience those same things.
And people who might not know the FFA, I suppose they will think of it as being heavily, which it has to be, and of course in plant sciences, animal sciences, those things. But there's also matters such as mechanics, electronics. Another good example, I was thinking the one the other day was, the parliamentary procedure folks, the speakers. So there are a lot of other elements to what they can learn in FFA.
You're right on. I think what's neat about it is when a person comes into the FFA, there's so many opportunities, those technical areas that you talked about, but also those soft skills. And I almost hate to call them soft skills because I don't want it to undermine it, but the reality is being able to work well with people is a real skill, and they develop that in the FFA through their committee work, through their role as an officer. They're able to speak because they've been asked to recite things like the FFA Creed, and then of course parliamentary procedure helps every meeting go better. And so we know that they're better when they've come through the program.
I remember meeting a corporate vice president, and he looked very familiar to me, and he was in the energy industry. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I remember seeing him 30 years ago, interviewing him as an FFA speaker.
Sure.
So yeah, you talk about, they're not really soft skills, they're skills that people continue to progress and learn the rest of their lives.
We're always excited to see where someone goes after they've been involved in the FFA and youth-type organizations, because I think they develop confidence that the average population doesn't have. They're paired with mentors who really care about them. Our advisors, who are our agricultural educators, are key in that development. They see potential, they challenge them in a positive way and nurture that, and that's something pretty exciting to see happen. And
then annually, state or national competitions for them,
yes.
Which gets to be a lot of people don't see it, but that's a really exciting part for the kids. I've known kids in that. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to set goals, achieve them, and if you don't achieve it, that's okay. You've still developed some skills, and you'll probably come back a little bit more intense next year.
Yeah. In the few minutes that we have left, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the ways that people who are not familiar with these programs can engage with them. So in your case, Sue, Ag in the Classroom, Minnesota Department of Ag, is that where most people find you and start to work with you?
Potentially. I mean, there's lots of different ways. We try to get out and about and be present at agricultural conferences and events, and also educational events where we can connect with those teachers. You know, we have a website, mn.agclassroom.org, that you can go to and find, you know, the different programs that we have to offer, like the tours I mentioned, and grant opportunities, and different things that are going on, as well as, you know, all of the resources that teachers can order. So, and also too, it's fun to connect with like the people in Granite Falls who are interested in organizing some sort of agricultural event in their community. So, you know, we're willing to reach out and help organize those or give ideas for different activities and how you can really engage with students.
So it can be anything as simple as just a few lesson plans, or perhaps because of community initiative it grows into something much bigger.
Right, there's you know, anything and everything is open. We just want every student to have some sort of information and background about agriculture.
Okay, great. And Val, the FFA, I know you'd mentioned that the involvement often comes through a high school department where they've got teachers. But how else do people find out more about FFA and where they need to go?
Sure. So you could definitely learn more about the FFA and the FFA Foundation on our websites. And I think really there's a lot of opportunities for people to get engaged and to volunteer. That might be through the FFA alumni program that we have. Those are very active volunteers. And then if it's getting involved in sponsoring students, it's through programs like our Blue Jackets Bright Futures program, where people individually sponsor a jacket to empower them to do all they can do within the FFA, or support us in some other financial ways.
So by sponsoring a jacket, then essentially what they're doing is figuring out a way to directly help a young person. As you said, many of them are disadvantaged.
Correct. There's almost a half of our students have some kind of economic challenges that they're dealing with, and we believe that the jacket is one way to get them fully engaged and to feel ownership in something bigger than themselves, and FFA does that for them, so it's exciting.
And of course people, you know, the blue FFA jackets, that's one of the things that haven't changed for a long time. So people know exactly, you know, what it looks like and what they're supporting. So great note there to end on. Val Arsvold from the FFA Foundation and Sue Knott from Ag in the Classroom, thank you for joining us on Compass.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's all for this week on the topic of Ag in the Classroom. Our Compass producer, Laura K. Prosser, will take it from here and end this week's episode with the next installment of the Compass Literature Corner. Thanks for watching.